Welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap podcast with your hosts, Jody Roscoe and Heather Fisher. We're talking about all things downsizing, from our own experiences with clients to guest experts. Let's make downsizing easier, one conversation at a time.
Hi, welcome to Downsizing Roadmap podcast. We are here with an episode just talking about maybe some emotional changes that come along with downsizing. Letting go of more than just the stuff and how to maybe not lose yourself in the process and find that new you after downsizing is over.
Yeah, I definitely think it's about finding yourself, or who you are going to be, maybe who the next you.
Yeah, I'm Heather Fisher.
And I'm Jody Roscoe.
And we're excited to talk about this today. I think it's a transition where there's so much on the other side, so much freedom and time and new choices to make. But sometimes in the midst of it or right after a downsizing change, it doesn't quite feel that way. So just want to promise you all that it is better once we get through that, and we'll give some tips on emotionally getting through the process.
Yeah, because, change can be hard. We talk about that in our classes that we give. And it can be exciting too. It's just your mindset around what that is. And even if it's exciting, that doesn't mean that you don't have some, emotional letdown on some of the things that are different now that aren't ever going to go back to being the way that they were. And that can be if you're downsizing as an empty nester and your kids, have gone and they're not going to come back. Or that could be if you're downsizing, maybe your spouse is gone, maybe you're just letting go of your bigger house. Maybe it's not as big as that, but your situation is changing, and in ways that it isn't ever going to go back to the way that it was, right?
Exactly that, Jody. And I think that happens more than once in our lives. Yeah. We don't always quite notice it because we're not defining the other shifts in phase quite so much as we do when we downsize. But like you said, when you become an empty nester and your routine changes from taking care of the kids' needs or the kids' stuff to not doing that, or, then there's a phase we all, go through where your adult kids have kids of their own, and maybe you're helping with the babysitting and going to their activities. And then you almost go through it again when the grandkids age out of wanting the adults around for everything, and you shift again that you're not going to choir concerts and sporting events. And then, like you said, when you're in the caretaker role, when that changes, if that was your whole routine, that can be a big shift of finding what you do with your daily routine and your daily habits.
And who you even are anymore, because sometimes you can get just so wrapped up in that other person's life, whether that's your kid's life or, somebody that you're taking care of, or, whatever that is, and lose yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity to take some time and think about that.
Reinvent a little bit. Yeah. And I think the biggest time, we talk every episode about how downsizing can be a really big project, that becomes your day-to-day is going through things and managing the move and, all of that when that's over, kind of like, what do I do with my day?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about what that feels like and what some ideas for what to do next.
Yeah, I think sometimes, everybody, you have these roles that you're playing, and when the role goes away, you're like, wait, who am I now, right? Who am I now? So, like, we have some people who have, they manage their house like a business, right? My mom had some friends when she was younger, and their parents were, he was an admiral, and so he was never home. And so the wife, she was her side of the military, she managed that house and she did all the things. And when he would come home, they would have all these problems because, he wanted to manage, because he's, an admiral. He manages things.
Yes.
And she's like, back off, this is my house. Like,
cannot have two project managers.
And so I kind of look at it like that. You have gone through life and you've done all the things, whatever that is. Maybe it's like you decorate for every holiday and that's who you are, and you have totes of holiday stuff, and you do that, and maybe you did that for the kids, and maybe you're not going to do as much money anymore. Maybe, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I think a lot of us find pride in those type of roles, being the resourceful one, being the host, being the one who can fix anything, so many ways to define it, but we take pride. And so giving up that and not having that, if you're not filling that spot, it can feel like a loss.
Yeah, gosh, we see a lot of that, I think, with men and their tools.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we had a ton of tools at one time. I mean, we used to flip houses and we had tons and tons of tools. And as we moved forward, it just kind of got to where we didn't do that quite as much. And we maybe hired some of that out. And I got a little bit older and a little bit, weaker, and I don't want to do drywall anymore.
Yes.
But yeah, but we still had all the tools. And, 1 year Mark got rid of a whole bunch of our tools, but then of course you're like, wait, where's that thing? But yeah, no, it was good. We realized like we aren't going to use that stuff anymore. And so, but it is a weird feeling like, wait, what do you mean I'm not going to do it anymore?
Yeah. And the 80-20 rule can definitely be applied to those categories, even if you're keeping some tools for
we kept some
screwdrivers and the hammers and the things you need for daily small projects. But if you're the person that people in the neighborhood come to because you have everything, or your kids come to, or you're the one, that's an adjustment, even if you know that you're no longer using it. When you're the resource, the knowledge base, and have the things needed, that's just a shift.
Well, and then that's your personality, right? So it is part of your personality. So you're the neighborhood handyman guy, or you're the neighborhood hostess, or, you're the family chef, you're the one who cooks everything and does all the things. Or maybe my mom was the family historian, right? Yeah. She just wanted to, know all about our history, and she loved to go delve into that. And she was working on getting us into the Daughters of the Revolution, and she just loved that. She loved seeing where everyone came from and digging into all that stuff. And because she loved history and all of that stuff, I think that rolled over into all paperwork somehow. And she just felt like she needed to keep everything. Like she was a keeper of the memories, keeper of photos, keeper of, papers and all of that stuff. So she was our family historian, right? So it just kind of gives you roles that you put yourself in. And when you really think about that, you can still be those things. You don't necessarily have to keep all the things to do them.
Yeah. I think we can rest easy knowing that both emotions can be there at once too. You can feel relieved to not be taking on these big tasks and big responsibilities, but also sad that you're not doing that anymore. I know, this year, both my mom and my mother-in-law, considering not being the ones hosting Thanksgiving, and it's a both. Like, oh, that's a relief. I don't want to cook for 20 people, and I don't have that in me anymore. But also,
it's always been at my house.
Yeah, that's always been this way. So we get that for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that's really something that we have to accept, that that's part of life, and that our traditions can change, and that's actually okay. I think sometimes we try to hold on to some of that a really long time, maybe longer than we should.
Yeah. I think if you're listening, one thing you can do is take a look around your house and really look at some different categories and areas as to, what are some of those items in your home that you feel you always handled, in managing, and really look at your emotions around those categories. Is it all of your hosting, platters and bowls and all of that? And, sit in that emotion for a minute. What does this make me feel like? What role did I play using these? And am I ready to reduce that or let it go? Is it the tools, like we mentioned before? That's often workshops and garages full that we see. Is it, you always had the prettiest, yard in the neighborhood and it's landscaping or gardening things? Did you grow vegetables and give them to all the neighbors? And it's okay if you're scaling that back and you can't do that anymore.
And we've had people who've done a few container gardens and still grow their tomatoes or still grow, whatever in their smaller space, and had a little area that they can still garden in and enjoy that without having to take care of all the stuff that was just exhausting.
Yeah, without it being just the singular role that defines you. You can adjust to that.
I think that part of why it gets emotional is because it's your identity and it's wrapped in your purpose or your usefulness, right? And so if you feel like, oh, if that's not who I am anymore, and then what is my purpose, right? And I think that is so just fully goes to step one of our plan, which is, get a little dreamy, right? And dream about what it is that you want that to look like. What is your purpose? And you need to have one. That is actually really, really important. And so once you figure out what that looks like, then letting go of the old purpose can be easier.
Yeah. And I think alongside purpose, what is my routine? How much of these things took up my daily routine? Being a caregiver for someone else, or babysitting grandkids, or, planning things, managing the household, cleaning, around your items, or a bigger house than you needed to, and that was your role, then that was likely your routine as well. So if you take those pieces and reduce them or move to a new phase where those aren't the roles that you'll be playing, what do you fill that time with? And be dreamy not only about where you're going to live, but that daily routine and what that looks like and what's close by, and really be intentional about scheduling things so that you're not left feeling just unsettled.
Right.
What am I supposed to do today?
I know I've talked about my Nana before about, after my grandpa passed away, she went out and became a docent at a museum and joined a book club. And, she just did a whole bunch of things to find her place. And your mom, where your dad was, ended up becoming the ambassador of the place, right?
Yeah. My mom started volunteering at the nursing home where my dad was. Among visiting my dad, she started reading to the residents there and doing kind of a book club and just helping with some other presentations. And, now that we've lost my dad, my mom still is going up there multiple times a week just to continue. That was the first thing she said is, I'm still going to volunteer, and they were thrilled to have her, and that fills, her time, and I'm sure, just helps her feel connected to that time we just went through. But she's up there, and she still volunteers every day at the elementary school that we went to as kids. So, for 45 years or more, she's been up at that school every day. Sometimes it's just giving the kids a hug in the morning when they come in, and sometimes it's more robust volunteering, but she definitely is an example of filling that routine with
finding
caregiver
purpose.
Roles because she loves being a caregiver.
And she finds the purpose wherever she is. I mean, she went there with your dad to visit your dad and take care of your dad, and ended up finding some purpose there as well.
Yeah.
So it is everywhere. If you look for it, you can find it easily.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a study, I need to find it here in my notes, but, just the amount of your health that is affected. Oh, yes, here it is. Is
that the one you were looking for?
Yeah, 79% of women over 60 say they found purpose through caregiving and household management. So it's definitely a role that, we all feel as women. 80% of us are feeling that. So if that shifts, you do need to find it somewhere else so that you're not feeling lost on that.
And there are so many people in this world that need help.
Yeah.
And so honestly, whether that's if you're empty nesting and you're feeling that, go find a place that you can volunteer. It will fill you up. It will give back to you more than you are giving to it. And so if that's something that you're missing, there are people that need you. Go find them, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the stat I was thinking of. Harvard Health found that purpose in retirement is the #1 indicator of healthy aging, that it's even more important than our physical health. So that's what we're talking about, making sure that you're not just reacting to a change due to age or health and letting it happen to you, but going out and being dreamy and finding purpose. And that doesn't really matter where you're living or what size that space is. That's something we can all choose to just find that daily purpose of what we're filling our time with. That can be different for all of us, but we have to be intentional about it to find that contentment and happiness and move past any sadness or grief that we're feeling.
Yeah, I think once you fill it up with something else, it's so much easier to let it go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that is our step one of our 5-step program for downsizing, is to be dreamy about what your future can look like. And that's the step I feel like people most skip.
Yeah.
They just don't do that. We don't spend a lot of time thinking about our future and talking about our future and thinking about who we are and what we want to be. But we really should. We should, because that will make all the difference, whether that's a happy or, whether you're feeling like it's a joy or a loss.
Yeah. And there's some indicators as you move into this next phase. Maybe you've moved to a new place, or maybe you've made some other downsizing changes, but some indicators, that go around. We could call it post-purpose depression, but if you're noticing yourself just feeling extra tired, feeling a lot of indecision, back to that decision fatigue, but if you're having trouble making simple decisions, what are I having for lunch, all of that, or if you're just avoiding, you're not unpacking yet, you're not, maybe you're scheduling commitments with, social commitments, but then you're canceling on them and you're just avoiding things. These are probably signs that you're just going through a little bit of depression over the change, because change is hard. So that's the time to not let that become, your new normal, but to take some steps to really embrace your new phase and find that purpose and find your new routine.
Yeah. So if you're feeling empty and or not feeling, excited, people will say, "Oh my gosh, it's best. I wish we would have done it sooner," and whatever. If you're not feeling like that, then you need to go back. You probably skipped step one. You probably skipped step one and went straight to let's get the action part done, but didn't get that emotional, mental part.
Yeah.
done.
If you're feeling some grief in this phase, it's not that you did anything wrong or made the wrong decision.
Right.
You just need to move through that with some intention, feel all those emotions, find a new purpose. And it doesn't mean that grief or that depression is forever. It's a phase, and we'll help you get through it with some tips. And, we know it will be better on the other side.
So think about as you're walking around your house, is it a living thing? Are you creating life in that house, or is it kind of a museum to your former self? Right?
Yeah.
What is that? Is it just, I used to do that, and I used to do that, and I don't do that anymore, or there's all the kids stuff, or what does that look like? Or is it a place where you're actively living and creating memories, and think about that.
Yeah, there's so much both physical and emotional weight from that stuff in our house that is attributed to a former phase in our life, because it's taking up space. You have to dust around it, move it, shuffle it, pull it down out of attics and back and forth. So there's the physical tiredness, but the emotional drain of constantly reminding yourself that life changes and life moves down the road, instead of just being excited about new things and new phases, can really take a toll.
And as you're doing that, remember, guilt is not a gift, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't need to feel bad that you aren't keeping. Maybe you had a big house and you could keep, some, a lot of your family's things, or you got, you're the one that got that. Oh, they have a big house. They can take this and that and all the things.
The family storage unit.
Yeah.
We talked about that in another episode.
Yeah.
So.
And your kids are like, yeah, I'm just going to leave all my stuff that I don't, want to make decisions on, and I'll just leave it at mom's because her house is big enough to do that, or whatever that looks like. So if you're ready to be moving on from it, you can. And guilt is not, shouldn't be part of the equation, not a gift, right? You're not going to feel guilty from your, parents and whoever, you can hear them in your head even if they're not here. But you're not going to feel that because you don't need to. There will be things that you love that you will keep, and that's great. And there will be things that you let go of, and that's okay. And then you're also not going to pass that down to your kids, right? Not going to take it from your, from above and pass it down. Yeah. Either way, it's okay. We can just let it go because, again, the stuff is about the stories. It's not about the stuff, right? So it's the stories and how it relates to you and how it lives in your legacy. And that is why stuff is important. Otherwise, stuff is just stuff.
Yeah. And knowing that stuff is just stuff and it's the stories that are important, I think we just can't emphasize enough in this episode. Keep writing your story. Keep adding new chapters.
Yeah.
Your story's not a done and finished. What's in that next chapter, and watch it unfold.
Yeah.
And choose what you're writing in it.
Yeah. And if you want to do some reflection on some of the stuff that you have, write down those stories too from, people, the person you were in different lives. We have different phases of our lives, right? And so write down those stories of who you were then and what that reminds you of. And then you can let go of the stuff because now you have the stories.
Yeah. I'm a big avid reader, as I know you are too, Jody. And I look at it like, some of the books that I've loved, I would reread them. Mm-hmm. And it's like rereading through your own story by thinking about the memories or looking at those things you've kept to honor it. You're rereading that book that you loved. But if that author, of your favorite books said they were releasing a new book with the same characters, we'd be first in line.
Right.
Like, it's my favorite book. I can't wait to find out what happened to them.
Or what happens next.
Yeah, what happened next in their story. And so really just look at your own life that way. That, through all of our episodes, we've talked so much about honoring that story and finding the legacy. That's the story you get to go back and reread because it's manageable and you've displayed it, or you've made it something you can easily look through or tell other people about because it's sorted and handy and reduced in volume. And then we're still writing that story and adding to that.
Yes. So live forward, right? If your house is feeling museum-ish, it's time to make a change, right? How are we living forward? How can we reflect joy, creativity, learning, connection? How can we deal with some of that stuff and not have it feel, because if that's how it's feeling and you've moved on as a person, or your life has moved on, whether you wanted it to or not, I learned in the last few years, we have very little control over any of that stuff. And so you have to just let that go. You aren't going to be able to control it. And the harder you clutch onto it, the more pain you're going to give yourself. And so if life has moved on, you need to move on too and figure out what your next life is going to look like. So that's the best thing I can say about that. And if you're in your home and you're feeling like it is holding you back in a way, right, with your old self that you aren't anymore, but you haven't figured out who the new self is yet, spend some time. Just spend some time and figure that out.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Some ways you can approach finding that new self. There's 4 different ways here we can talk about on ways to get involved or to jump into something. And I feel like these are very personality based. What do you already love at your core? And then here's some suggestions for that.
Yep, the 4 C's.
Yes, the 4 C's. Contribution is, giving back. Is there something that you have loved doing all of your life that you can mentor other people in, teach a class on, be part of a club that is showing other ways? Can you share that skill that you may be doing less, but you can pass it on to show, whether that's family members or in an organized class, in a club? What ways can you keep that in your life and pass it on so someone else gets that joy from whatever it is, sewing or woodworking or gardening? There's so many ways you could plug in, or keep the hobby in a smaller way. We've talked about that. Keep that, and so you're sharing the product of that, but in a different way.
Yeah. So contribution is that. So curiosity, take a class. Instead of giving a class, take one. Learn something new. Start small. Figure out like, hey, so here's something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to take singing lessons. So I didn't do it this year, but that is still on my list to do because I love to sing.
Check your vision board, see if you added it on for next year.
But anyway, I will do that someday. I will be doing that. So, or play piano, or learn the guitar, or whatever that is, or start reading if you haven't been a reader, or start painting. My Mark's dad started painting when he was after he retired, and he would go down to the senior center and take art classes, and so what I gave Mark last year for Christmas, he started painting homemade Christmas cards, and I had 12 years of them, and so last year I framed them all and put them, that was a gift that I gave him, of all the homemade Christmas cards that he had watercolor painted, and it's so cool. It is really cool.
I love that. And what I love so much about learning something new at this phase in life is, when you're a kid learning a new sport or learning something, there's a lot of pressure, especially in society now. Or if you're learning a new skill for your career or related to that, there's so much pressure of you have to be great at it because you might get a scholarship, or you might be,
right.
Is your team winning? And in this phase of life, there's so much freedom and enjoyment that you're not doing it to master it, or you don't have to be doing it to master it. You are just finding pure joy in learning that something new, whether you're fantastic at it from the get-go or whether you're not. Just do it because it's fun.
Right. You can go to the colleges and audit classes. You can for free. Most colleges will let you do that. Just whatever. Find something that's interesting and do that. So that's curiosity. C is connection. Join something. Join a club, a walking group. My Nana played golf. She was at the country club. She would play bridge, and she would, hang out and do all of that stuff. And she also walked every day. And she had a book club. She was very, very busy. So, but anyway, pick something, and maybe more than one thing, but pick something and do that where you are connecting to people.
Yeah. At the smallest level, you can take a walk at the same time every day, or just every day in general, and just make sure to say hi to the people you pass by, and, get to know your neighbors, and, maybe arrange tea weekly with someone that you've met. There's lots of things to join that are more formal, like clubs and things, but just finding that connection with one person on a small conversation every day can really change your world.
Yeah, head to the dog park, right?
Yeah.
Find local dog lovers, whatever. Figure that out. Find some new connections. And then the fourth one,
creation.
Yep.
So that is taking on projects. You're maybe painting or writing or gardening or cooking, and the best way to do this is at a small scale. So you're not overburdening yourself with all the supplies for something giant. Just pick up something that gives you a creative outlet to make something. I think that changes our brain when we've done something and there's a product at the end of that
Yeah.
we made.
And I think all of this works in all the different phases of our lives when we are having a big change, whether that's, empty nesting, or whether that's, downsizing because you're going to go into, a community, like whatever level of way that you're doing this, when there's just a big change in your life, this is a great way to get yourself into who that new person of you is going to be.
Yeah. And I would just encourage you to find the courage to believe that what's ahead is worth making room for and worth going after, because it can be really great.
Right. And you know it. You know when it's time. Just do it. Just jump in and do it and stop being afraid. And just, what's on the other side is going to be great.
Yeah. I hope we can give people some courage to take some leaps of faith.
So if you're downsizing and you're feeling, sad about it, or feeling unmotivated because you're feeling sad about it, or whatever that looks like, stop doing that. Go back to the dreamy and start figuring out what life is going to look like. So then when you're doing it, you can use that motivation to understand it's okay to let go of this, or it's okay that this is happening because I'm going to be doing this next thing and I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So some questions you can ask yourself, when you're just struggling to find out what gives you personally that purpose feeling. When was the last time I lost track of time doing something? Mm-hmm. What's that activity that you get so wrapped up in mm-hmm. that you forget about what's going on around you? Is that reading a book? Is that working in your garden? What's that thing that brings you that just sense of, I could do this all day? Who feels uplifted after spending time with me, and who do you feel uplifted after spending time? Make those connections back to the sea of connection. Find those people that when you finish having lunch with them or tea or going on a walk with them, that you feel better and they feel better for that time spent together.
Yeah.
And what would I love to try with no pressure to succeed? Like Jody said, you've been telling me that for a couple years that you wanted to do mm-hmm. the singing lessons, and, we'll check back in and see when you get started. But I think we all have those little things that, are tickling in the back of our brain, like, oh, I wish I could do this or that. And I would probably be the one auditing all the college classes and, doing more of that because I loved it. And so there's something there for all of us. Just
and I think
about that.
Like if I had taken singing lessons when I was young, it would have been for a purpose to do something, whatever. And if I do it now, it's just for me. Like I'm not going to go sing out in front of people. I'm not doing that. It's just like something that's for me. I just want to do it for me. Yeah. And so, so much less pressure, so much more fun, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So much joy to be had. So again, what we said earlier, you are not done. You're just being rewritten, and go out and write your story. Give yourself a new routine, a new schedule, a new joy to be had, and just embrace that next time in your life, that next phase. If there's any resources that we can help you with, you can find those on our website, downsizingroadmap.com. And we're just here cheering you on, waiting to see, what new things everyone's going to embrace.
Yep. And if you love listening, share it with somebody. That's the best compliment that we could receive.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Downsizing Roadmap podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might need a little downsizing inspiration. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? Reach out to us on our website, www.downsizingroadmap.com. Until next time, let's keep simplifying and moving forward.